Hello, good crowd. I am so excited today. We get to talk to Eric Liguori, who is the president of the USASBE. We'll talk more about what that is. You want to know. And well, he's also the executive director of the Rowan Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship at Rowan University in Philadelphia. You really don't want to miss this episode. It's going to be great.
Welcome to the Your Mark on the World show with your champion of social good, Devin D. Thorpe.
Please support the sponsors who made this episode possible, including Johnson & Johnson's Caring Crowd and GoodCrowd.school. Eric, welcome to the show.
Devin, I'm so glad to be here and excited to be chatting with you today.
Well, thank you. It's an honor. I'm looking forward to connect with you again in person. This will be the first time since you joined the faculty there that we'll connect in person, but I'll be out there in September, on September 24th, right, for crowdfunding training sponsored by Rowan University.
Yeah, we're so excited to have you joining us in the great city of Philadelphia. We've got a great community of nonprofit leaders coming together to learn a bit more. So we're excited to have you see our hometown.
Yeah, and of course, I should mention that Johnson & Johnson's Caring Crowd pays for my costs, and then you're supporting it. So I really appreciate you and Johnson & Johnson making this possible so that we can train some nonprofits on
We're
great.
excited about it. We're very excited about it.
Yeah. Eric, tell us how you see this sort of work fitting into the work of the Rowan Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship. I know you've got a passion for social entrepreneurship.
So social entrepreneurship is my favorite class to teach. And I think it's my favorite class to teach because it's the class more so than any other where I see students' mindsets start to shift and their view on the world start to broaden. And I think they start to realize that they can make small impacts. They can look at building and scaling bigger impacts. And so for me, it's got a special place in my heart. For the university, we're very focused on being an economic catalyst in the region. And that's one of our core values. And so we want to be a very community-centered institution. We want to have an engaged student body that's outward looking and that's looking at solving really big problems that our hometown and our region and the world are facing. And so, you know, for us, social entrepreneurship is very much a focal part of what we're trying to do and where we're trying to go and how we're trying to prepare the next generation of entrepreneurs.
It is such a broad spectrum. It's a broad mission. It's like, social entrepreneurship is a tool for solving so many different issues, from poverty issues domestically and internationally, health issues domestically and internationally, and of course climate issues, clean water, clean air, and climate change. When you think about these social issues, what gets you fired up?
Oh gosh. We just ran a summer program for 60 high school kids, and they were all working on sustainability, clean water, clean air, environmental type challenges. For me personally, anything around children. I have a background working for a nonprofit organization that worked with the at-risk youth population. And so having been exposed to that and seeing some of the challenges for that population of people, I feel a special calling personally to try and find a way to make that scenario better for those kids.
What are some of the social enterprises you've seen, mentored, nurtured, that have addressed those issues that concern you the most?
Oh gosh. I'll talk about two student startups, both out of Florida State University, that aren't necessarily tied to those issues, but that I think back on quite a bit and find rather inspiring. One is called Who We Play For. And it's a student organization that was started by a group of university students who, when they were in high school, saw one of their colleagues pass away from a detectable, preventable cardiac issue. And so they have really pioneered and led a charge, merged with multiple organizations to effect legislation to require student athletes at the high school and the college level to get screened and so that they can work to try and save some lives. And through their work, they've saved probably hundreds of lives at this point. Sadly, you follow their Facebook feed and you see that there's still a tremendous opportunity and a lot of work to be done in this space. I've seen that organization spin off and inspire another group of students, and another student in particular who wanted to address the homeless population. And he went and he was very deliberate. He said, I'm going to solve this problem for one person. And once I solve it for one person, I'm going to solve it for two people. And once I solve it for two people, I'm going to solve it for three people. And now that organization has helped get 75 people or so in the Miami-Dade area off the streets and into housing. And so when I see students with no formal training looking at a problem that they just have a personal tie to and trying to find a way to move it forward, I get really energized and think, wow, if we could turn this population of students more towards some of these social causes and equip them with the tools they need and help them find their passion in that space, then we can really affect some great change.
I am so impressed by what your students have been doing. I would love to hear more about how your students addressed this homelessness issue because it is so persistent in the United States and in many other countries, but especially the United States.
Well, I think that there's a very complex set of problems that lead us down this path. And so I'm not going to profess to be an expert on that by any stretch of the imagination. But what I will say is if you peel back the layers, you realize that you might not be equipped to solve maybe the mental health component or the addiction component to it. But I think what this group realized was that there's a population of people who are trying to work, and there are small hurdles that they just can't seem to overcome to break the cycle. And so they're employable, they have some skill set, but the idea of having first, last, and security deposits and a credit score to get qualified for housing and to get electricity set up and all of that was a hurdle for a portion of this population. And so they were able to go and start solving that percentage of the problem. And I know that that's one small step towards a much bigger issue, but I don't think that the solution to this problem is going to be solved by one overarching thing. I think it's going to be lots of people stepping in and solving pieces of it in different and novel ways.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely true. Fascinating work. It must be inspiring for you to see young people, your students especially, those that you've had the opportunity to teach and mentor, when they tackle these big problems. How do you feel?
Oh gosh, you just want to support all of them, right? And that's the challenge because, fiscally or for whatever other reason, time, you don't have unlimited resources to help them scale it. And so I feel a great obligation to make sure that they have the skill set they need to go and find the resources they need to move forward, because I can't always solve the resource problem for them, but I can help try to equip them with the tools that they need so that they can be resourceful. And I think that's why I'm so excited to have you joining us in a few weeks in Philadelphia, because I think that's very consistent with the work you've been doing on crowdfunding for social good. And so we're so thrilled.
Well, I am excited to be there and to share information. Clearly, Eric, you are an exceptional leader, an exceptional educator. I think the SASP organization chose you as their Educator of the Year recently, and you were elected as the youngest president in the organization's history. Tell us a little bit about SASP and how this fits into your vision of solving the world's problems.
Sure. So USASB is a really special community. We're about 800 people large, about 650 or 700 in the US and 150 across the globe. We represent educators and program leaders in 34 countries and 45 states. And so it's really a community or a network of entrepreneurship education professors, center directors, program leaders coming together to share best practices, to be a sounding board, to pool resources, to find ways to better equip and empower the next generation of entrepreneurs. And we do that through a variety of programs, from professional development activities to annual conferences and meetings, to resources and resource sharing. And so it's really a special group, and we are growing every day.
It really is inspiring to think about all the influence that that group has. And I know that social entrepreneurship isn't the focus of that group, but I think it really is a passion for you. So tell us a little bit about how you infuse your passion for the social side of entrepreneurship into the USASB organization.
Sure. So, we're a membership organization. And so our focus, our mission, our everything is really driven by our members. And so we have topical interest groups across USASB. And one of our original groups, one of our most active groups, one of our largest groups is actually in social entrepreneurship. And so we've got a really strong core group of leaders in there right now that are actively engaged in our online community, are actively pooling resources and setting up activities for professional development. They're hosting a learning journey at the upcoming conference, for example. I just saw a plethora of competitions, of resource portals and everything else getting posted online. So we have a really engaged social contingent. USASB runs a journal. We welcome and we actually publish a fair amount of teaching cases and exercises, learning innovations around social entrepreneurship. And so while the organization as a whole might not be directly focused solely on social entrepreneurship, there's a lot in entrepreneurship education that is context irrelevant. And so a lot of what the organization does can be applied in a social setting. And we have a pretty strong critical mass of people who are social entrepreneurship educators, and they're focused in that space. So I find one of the cool things about USASB is as we have all these different diverse people entering our membership each year, they identify and they find different aspects of the organization that they can immediately feel like they have sort of a peer group with. And so that's, for me was social entrepreneurship when I started 10 years ago at USASB, and it's still a group that I'm actively engaged in.
Terrific. Eric, you are a young guy, but you've accomplished a lot. What are you most proud of having accomplished over your career?
Oh, gosh. The one thing that probably gets me most is I'm very family oriented. And so we were at a wedding maybe 2 months ago, and my uncle, his son was getting married, my cousin, and he had the microphone and he was doing his, father of the groom toast. And he said, Eric is one of the connectors that helps keep all the cousins together. And if I think about it, I really like that. And that's probably something that I hold very dear to myself. I treasure the work that I do every day. I love working with the student population at Rowan and across the U.S. But by and large, for me, it kind of starts with family and moving forward. So,
excellent. It's a great reminder. As you've been working in this social entrepreneurship space with such passion and such deliberate focus on learning and developing and articulating best practices, if you could share one key lesson learned, what would it be?
I think you have to look for the inflection point and decide where you want to go. So I go back to the homelessness example. Solve the problem for one person, then solve it for 2 people, then solve it for 3 people. At some point, that is a great effort and it can yield great results, but it's not scalable. And so at some point you have to decide, is your solution something that is going to continue to just solve it for one after another, or is there an opportunity to build a model around this and scale that effort to be bigger? I don't think there's a right or a wrong. I think the solution to some of our biggest problems, again, is a combination of efforts and people attacking it from different directions. But if you have the opportunity to find a solution that scales and you can scale that impact, then I think people doing that work are constantly in search for it. And so build that model, have a diverse set of revenue streams, and really try and go for growth.
Excellent. Eric, there are a lot of people who, work in this space. I'm curious about what brought you to it. What at the core, what interests you? What brought you to social entrepreneurship education as a passion?
It was totally by happenstance. I finished an MBA. MBAs traditionally, and I think it's changing, but MBAs traditionally are very profit focused, as you probably know better than anybody. And so I finished. I had a job. I was tired of the commute and the drive, and so I'm like, you know what? I'm going to find a job that isn't 90 minutes to work every day. And I started looking, within a 20-minute circle of my house. And I found a job with a nonprofit organization that worked with the at-risk youth population. And I was there, embarrassingly, it's terrible to say now, but I was there for probably a year and a half before the magnitude of what we did every day actually even hit me. Because I was working in HR, doing training in a corporate office in a building in Clearwater, Florida, near the beach. And I went out on a ride along with one of our re-entry families. And I had listened for so long to everyone talking about one of the big challenges when we ran residential treatment programs, among other things, was when we put the kids back in their original environment. And that was where the recidivism problem really crept up. And I couldn't figure out, or I never, I guess, really appreciated it until I went on that ride along and I saw what the original environment was. And then I went and I spent a night in the wilderness at one of our wilderness treatment facilities. And you see, and you talk to the kids there and you understand what their life story is and how they ended up there and what they're going back into when they go home. So juxtapose that with then that organization going through some restructuring and my position being eliminated. And I went back into like corporate America, Fortune 500. I never realized until I had the second experience and I looked back on my time in the nonprofit space, how much I valued the work that we did, because it didn't matter how bad the day was. I went home knowing that even if this kid ran away, that employee did this problem, blah, 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 blah. No matter any of that stuff that happened in my, day-to-day life, a population of children were better off because our organization was there. And it wasn't there when I went back to corporate and everything was margin driven and efficiency driven. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that by any means, but for me, that was sort of that moment where I was like, wow, I was just a much happier person when I was doing work that had a purpose. And so that's why I find myself, I think, drawn to the social space.
No, that's profound. Eric, what is your superpower?
Oh my gosh. That's a great question. We had a SASP board call a few hours ago, and we were actually joking about superpowers at the start of it. One of my longtime colleagues said to me earlier this year that my superpower, in sort of his words, were I was a facilitator of meaningful connections. And I think what he meant by that is I do a good job of connecting people. And the more I think about it, the more it's made me get more deliberate with it. So, I talk to a lot of people between my role at Rowan and USASB and just being a talkative person in general. I talk to a lot of people, from startups to students to business leaders to employers to foundations to NGOs on a pretty regular basis. And so I hear and I try to be a very deliberate listener to understand what people's needs are and what they're looking for. And then as I talk to others, when I see an opportunity, I'm very proactive in trying to connect people. And so maybe that's my superpower. I don't know. I was kind of taken back by it when it was first said to me. And the more I think about it, the more I actually wish I had recognized the role that people doing that for me early in my career had played. And so the more I think it's important to do that for others.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Well, Eric, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. We really appreciate it. I know you're busy. Before you go, would you take a few minutes and tell people how they can register for the training on September 24th, how they can learn more about the Rowan Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship and Rowan University, and how they can connect with you? That's a lot to ask.
Yeah, no.
Take a minute or two.
The training, the registration is up on Eventbrite right now. If you go to Eventbrite, you pull up Philadelphia, you look up crowdfunding for social good, you'll see this picture of this wonderful gentleman who I'm looking at right now pop right up. And it's September 24th, we're going to have a good day talking about crowdfunding. So you can definitely check it out there. If you want to get in touch with me or you need more information on the workshop or anything else, everything's by my name. So it's at Eric Liguori on Twitter, Eric Liguori on LinkedIn, and ericliguori@gmail.com. EricLiguori. So pretty easy to find.
Fantastic. Well, again, Eric, thank you very much for taking the time to be with us, and we wish you every success in the great work that you're doing.
Thank you, Devin. I appreciate all the work you're doing as well. We'll see you in a few weeks.
All righty. Let's do some good.
At Caring Crowd, we believe everyone has the power to make a difference. Through our crowdfunding platform for community health, we empower passionate people to drive real change. Whether you work for a nonprofit organization, volunteer, or want to get involved for the first time, you can post a campaign on Caring Crowd. Join us, because caring is where change begins.
At GoodCrowd.school, 5% of what you pay to learn how to make a difference goes to nonprofits working to eradicate extreme poverty, improve global health, and reverse climate change by 2045. So when you take a course to learn how to change the world, you do change the world. Get started at GoodCrowd.school today. Thanks for tuning in to the Your Mark on the World show, the Social Impact Podcast. Please subscribe via YouTube, iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, or Spotify.